G'day everyone, welcome to Footyology Final Siren after a mini final of sorts last night at Marvel Stadium. Not a finals atmosphere, obviously, because no people there. We're getting used to that. But a massive result in the context of the top eight. Another big win to GWS. They have certainly hit a rich vein of form. 39-point winners over rather lacklustre and hapless Richmond, who look sentenced now to miss out on the finals after winning 3 flags in the past 4 years, which begs the inevitable question, is an era over? We will discuss that tonight in full detail and take, I'm sure, plenty of your questions on that. What about GWS? Can they actually do some damage in September? Provided they get there, obviously. They've got to beat Carlton next week, but they're certainly going to be pretty unbackable favourites for that one, you'd think. All your questions, anything you want to put on the football agenda, fire in your questions now on Twitter and Facebook. As I say, very good evening to my Footyology Final Siren co-host, Mark Fine. Well, it was a bit of a no contest, Finey, and just about all over by half-time.
Yes, because of GWS's brilliance. That's to put not an overstating, I think, what was a brilliantly executed game plan and some beautifully executed football, especially in the first half. I think the second half was predominantly junk time, but we were treated to some great football in the first half by the Giants. So for me, a very significant evening, Rowan. It is the end of an era. That's not saying that Richmond can't regroup next year, but we know it's the end. When a team's won 3 out of 4 premierships and doesn't make the finals, then that is certainly a sort of a halt in operations, isn't it? So we can say that. And for the Giants, I think we've got a live one in the finals, a very interesting team. They don't probably finish 8th if things play out as expected. I'd expect West Coast to finish 8th. And they, therefore, would probably play Brisbane. I mean, this is all assuming things go to plan, which hasn't happened this year. But I just think they're a live one. Not for, look, they were great. They've got a functional forward line with Toby Green to come back into it. Taranto stepped up beautifully tonight, but that means they can have confidence in him going forward. I think the back line's going beautifully. They're really interesting, aren't they? I'll tell you one thing, and I want to ask you this and put it to our viewers. I saw a list of players that were out of the team tonight to come back in, and I really only see a spot for Phil Davis and for Toby Green, and maybe Daniels, who is loved. I don't think Canelio, and certainly not Finlayson, are a cohesive part of that team or particularly wanted.
Yep, no, it's a fair observation. We'll certainly knuckle down on that one. We'll go through the details first. While you send your questions in, we're getting a few coming through already, so fire away and we'll get through them all. But let's have a look first at the quarter-by-quarter scores. And this definitely a win set up in a blistering opening turn by the Giants, 7-3 to the Tigers 2-2. And we'll talk also about a couple of significant moments early in that first quarter, which certainly, one of them certainly robbed the Tigers of some early momentum, and the other one cost them a pretty cheap goal. So 7-3 to 2-2 at quarter time. Another 5 to just 2 in the second quarter by the Giants, who led by 50 points at the halftime break, 12-5 to 4-3. And really, in retrospect, the second half, a bit of a training drill. 4 goals to 6 goals to Richmond in that second half. And the final scores, the Giants 16-10, 106, 39-point victors over the Tigers, 10-7, 67. Let's have a look at the goal kickers and best. For the victors, 4 goals to Tim Taranto, who took over the role usually played by the absent, suspended Toby Green. Well, he made a pretty good fist of it. 4 goals to him and really gave him a heap of spark up in that forward 50 early on. 3 to Harry Himmelberg, very lively performance from him. 2 to Daniel Lloyd, got a lovely boot on him, Daniel Lloyd. 2 to De Boer, Singles to Hogan, Hopper, Perryman, Ward and Mumford, the big mummy, chipping in at the end there with a goal snapped, in fresh air really, didn't have anyone around him. For the Tigers, pretty sorry tale. 2 goals to Baker, 2 to Lynch, 2 to Shea Bolton and singles to Edwards, Coleman Jones, Rewalt and Morris Rioli Jr. The best, as voted by you, Finey, went with Josh Kelly. Fantastic game by him, 32 disposals. He finished up with Taranto, those 4 goals, obviously critical. Nick Haynes, outstanding again in defence, as indeed he is most weeks these days. Callan Ward, Himmelberg and Cumming rounding out the Giants' best. And for the Tigers, Baker, Short, Vlosten, Lynch, Cochin and Daniel Rioli, just with the possessions, 32 to Kelly, 26 to Hopper, 24 to Cumming, 22 to Callum Ward, 21 to Lockie Whitfield. And for the Tigers, 32 to Jaden Short, 31 disposals to Cochin, 23 to Baker and 22 to Prestia and Daniel Rioli, who's made has made a pretty good fist of his move to defence. All right.
Rowan, how many tackles to Kelly?
I don't have that in front of me, Finey.
Well, he got to 10 during the last quarter, so at least 10. Pretty good effort, isn't it, when you're a ball winner and a ball user like him to double up, to get that double figure tackle number. So very impressive.
Yeah, well, 11 tackles.
Yeah, pretty good.
Well, celebrating that 8-year contract, which will see him a Giant for the rest of his footballing life. All right, let's rip through some questions. And first tonight is well-known Richmond supporter, Trout from Woodend. Even Trout is conceding. He says, that's a wrap and our tired legs are knackered. A big break will help us as we take 6 picks under 36 in the draft. Might trade a couple of picks. Well, we'll talk about this in more detail a bit later, but I think we probably need to start talking about Richmond's depth now, because I think one thing that hasn't happened this year, which did happen previous years, is those replacement players just haven't been able to fill the breach that the absentees have left. And we saw in previous years, Bolter came in and ended up becoming a permanent part of that side. Higgins before him, we've seen the likes of Ross. Jake Arts came in, I think, initially to replace an injured player. All those guys were able to slot into a team that was winning and confident. It's been a different story this year. We've seen the likes of Mansell. He's struggled. We've seen a little bit of Ralph Smith. I think he's still very much feeling his way. Morris Rioli Jr. has only played a couple of games. Callum Coleman-Jones hasn't necessarily gone on with it. Maybe Orchal, I thought he might take a few more steps this year than he has. And I think generally... that's a good one. I think he's struggled a bit in defence. So the quality of the replacements hasn't been the same as previous seasons, has it? No,
it hasn't. They've also tried that young chap, Martin. Is it Will? I'm not quite sure his first name. Will Martin. Obviously Matthew Parker through the mid-season draft. No, it just hasn't resonated. And in the end, there's a critical mass, isn't there? And I guess the system works. When you're up for so long, you're not supposed to have the quality replacements that Richmond have had. But they've done brilliantly over the last 4 years. Look, the backline rebuilds quickly because Bolter and Broad will be right next year, we assume. So the backline, maybe there's some... I don't think Hawley's part of it necessarily anymore, but Daniel Rioli will be an able replacement. So you'll have Bolter, Broad, Vlosten, Rioli, Short, who's a brilliant rebounding backman, and maybe one of Asprey or Grimes, depending on how their body holds up. So the backline looks as good as it has even in the premiership years, certainly last year. So that's a cause of some optimism, I think.
Yeah, and look, a key, I think, to their demise this season. I mean, they've been scored against pretty easily relative to previous seasons. But when you think about the personnel we're missing, the core of that missing clutch of players are their first choice defenders. Bolter, Broad. I know Hooley's probably on the way out, but he has been a key part of that defence. And Asbury tonight, a late withdrawal, and McIntosh. So there you go, 5 premiership defenders missing from that lineup. So that's not to be underestimated. And the proof of the pudding there about their defence struggling, at one stage this evening, the Giants had 31 inside 50 entries for 19 scores. So going at something like, mid 60 something % scores for inside 50s, which is a phenomenal rate. All right, let's keep going. David Haley says Trent Cotchin should ride off into the sunset and enjoy parenthood. Well, I probably would have agreed with that, David, but I reckon he was okay tonight. And I reckon the previous 2 weeks, he was pretty good. So I reckon on the basis of his late season form, I wouldn't be saying that now. What do you think, Finey?
He'll play on next year. What we've been talking about and what the commentators were talking about was, the shortened time off, the shortened pre-seasons. When you're in the finals, it extends the year out. And when you're a physical player like Cochrane, who put his body on the line as captain through 4 finals campaigns, you'll be surprised how revitalised he looks at the start of next year. Now, that's not to say that his time's not coming, but we are talking about a pretty tired bloke at the end of a long campaign, remembering that Prestia hasn't been in the team much this year. Dustin Martin's been out for a month now. So he's really carried a heck of a load and not been, he's been at the coalface. Yeah, sure, he's getting older, but you'll be surprised, footy fans, how revitalised he is, at least for the start of next season. And he'll be a player of some value next year. Don't worry about that.
I think another thing too, and Trout pointed it out before, but I think another thing on reflection, the lateness of the finish to last season.
Yes,
Grand final October the 24th. We started on time, so it was a particularly short preparation. And they'll get a longer, presuming they miss out. I mean, that's still mathematically possible. Presuming they miss out, they'll have a longer finals preparation, pre-season preparation than they've enjoyed for 5 years. So I'm certainly not prepared to say end of an era, because I just think this might be a bit of a glitch. Having said that, I do have some reservations about the quality coming through, but as Trout says, plenty of picks at the draft table, so maybe they can bounce back pretty quickly. Julian Evans says, does this remind people of 2019 GWS potentially messing up a lot of teams in the finals? Of course, GWS in 2019 knocked over the Bulldogs week 1. Who'd they beat in week 2? It's gone. They beat, I might have that wrong. They beat the Swans in the elimination final.
That's right.
Yeah, but who do they beat in the semi? They then beat, of course, Collingwood in the preliminary final by a goal. It's not coming to me. Someone send it through. I'm as good as they've been the last few weeks. I still don't see them challenging the top 4 teams.
Did they play like Port Adelaide or somebody, or one of the Adelaide, Brisbane? Oh, Brisbane.
Oh, that's right. They beat Brisbane at the Gabba by a kick. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I don't see them as being as capable of doing that this time around. I mean, I still look, 3 wins from 4. Maybe they have turned it around on a more permanent basis, but their story this year has been very up and down. Incidentally, just while we're talking about them, let's touch on what you were talking about.
And also, Rowan, they've been out of Sydney for how long now? I mean, it's a great effort, but it might tell in the next 2 or 3 weeks as well to be sort of, out of your home state and routine, and it is going well, but it can fall apart. I mean, Sydney looked tired last week.
No, that's true. That's true. It's certainly an extra dimension to the finals this year. I was just going to say, to your point you brought up before, the outs at the moment, it's still a very long list, but in terms of potential parts of that first choice team, you're missing Cornelio, Daniels, Davis, Green, or two Greens, one obviously back next week. The only other two I sort of mentioned there were Keith and Sam Reid, who line ball senior players. So,
I mean, Buckley's out for the year. He would have been in, but he's out for the year, so can't count him.
Whilst the injury list is longish, there's probably only sort of 5 walk-up starts there, isn't there? I guess it's a quarter of your lineup.
Well, not for me, because Cornelio's not in their best team.
Yeah, what if he gets fit?
I don't think they want him in their best team, Ro.
Yeah, well, it's we saw last
he was
year.
He was in the VFL for like 3 weeks. They could have brought him back if they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he got dropped even last year, didn't he? So that would be quite sad if he wasn't able to be part of it, because he's certainly been a real stalwart for them. Dan Fancher, Wild Panda says GWS the new dark horse. It's Geelong or Dogs to lose, but GWS might screw it up. I think you're a bit tough on Melbourne there, Wild Panda. I think Melbourne's back in the ball game. That was a particularly impressive win in Perth last Monday night, and I felt like the week before against Gold Coast, they really got their mojo back. And they have also beaten both Geelong and the Western Bulldogs comfortably. So I wouldn't be discounting them. But I think it's those 3 teams to lose. All right, let's keep going. Dan Fancher says the king is dead. The new king is still yet to step forward. True. Certainly, it's as even a premiership race at this stage as I can remember. I mean, I haven't looked at the premiership odds this week. I presume the Bulldogs probably favourite, followed by maybe Geelong and then Melbourne equal. But usually at this stage, there's at least sort of 1, 2 at most clear favourites. And this year, there really isn't. It really is anyone's flag, isn't it, in those terms?
Absolutely. Look, Port Adelaide, we've been saying now for probably 2.5 months that they're not quite up to it. They only need 1 good game or play a team who has an off night. It's not impossible at all for Port Adelaide. And we'll assume that the games are going to be played in the states of the teams that are supposed to host them. It's not impossible at all for Port Adelaide to come here and beat the top team, whoever it is, Melbourne, Bulldogs or Geelong. And then they straight away get a home preliminary final. I mean, it is open. I don't believe they will win the grand final, but they're 1 good game away from almost being equal flag favourites.
The problem with that, though, is that, 1 good game away from being equal favourites, but as far as winning a premiership goes, you've got to turn in 3 really good performances in a row, and they have consistently been unable to beat the teams above them.
True, and that's I'm not tipping them. I'm just saying that it's open. It's hellishly open. Sydney, 1 bad game against St Kilda, 1 week off. They've got a real nice feel about them. Rowan, we haven't discussed the most important thing.
What's that? Hang on, just before you do, I just want to give those flag odds. At the moment, Geelong actually favourite at $3.75, Bulldogs paying $4, Melbourne $4.50, and quite a gap to the 4th favourite, which is Port Adelaide. Brisbane $9, Sydney $13, GWS 21, and West Coast 41. Look,
what price was Port Adelaide again?
$8.
$8, yeah.
Beyond that top 3, I feel like the best chance of the rest is probably Sydney, but we'll get a better gauge on that when we see how they perform this week, because they did look very tired last week. All right, where are you going?
Your wish has come true.
What's that?
And as I said, the Trojan horse that gave us the week off before the finals, which was never right, we can use another Trojan horse to get rid of it. And have a guess what's happening, Rowan?
Well, it looks like they're
all
scrapping
intelligence says it's gone.
Yeah, well, couldn't go too quickly, and it's taken the pandemic, it appears, to do that. But if you're not across this, it's not official, but very strong speculation that the AFL understandably worried about what might happen with COVID. They don't want to have the luxury of that week off and just keep playing through. So I'm told, well, I read that they will ensure that the top 4 teams at least get 7-day breaks leading up to their first finals, which would give them some advantage. But more importantly, it would maximise the advantage of them winning their qualifying finals, because their opponents in the preliminary finals will have played straight through. So, I'm pretty happy about that. I think too, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that surely would strengthen the chances of a top 4 team winning the flag.
All of a sudden, the week off becomes desirous or desirable, instead of a poison chalice, because, as you've pointed out, it is no good for a team that is conditioned to play weekly to play once in 20 odd days. It's bad. It's bad. Harsh.
I wish you hadn't said desirous there, because immediately a Split End song called Iris popped into my
Iris
head.
But desirous.
Off the Corroboree album, which is a very good album too. All right,
Good.
Let's keep reading through the comments. Robert Rice says, even though they were bagged for their performance in round 13, the Giants' draw against North Melbourne now looks like their golden ticket to play finals. Amazing how valuable a draw can be sometimes. Hey, Hutchie. Nice little drive-by for Craig Hutchison there, who's always throwing up the tiebreaker concept. Yeah, well, spot on, Robert. I mean, this is why... that's not the main reason that I am a fan of draws. I'm a fan of draws because it is a result in the context of a 22-game season where you earn points for each game. And you're quite right. It's going to be a critical 2 points for them, basically booking them a finals berth. By the way, Finey, you said you think West Coast will finish 8th. And they may, but surely the odds would be against them, I think, if they, even if they beat Fremantle. I reckon they still need to beat Brisbane in the last game to get in, because their percentage is pretty poor. And that's provided, of course, say Essendon win their last 2 games.
Both.
Yeah.
And your last 2 games are against North Melbourne and?
Essendon's last game's against Collingwood.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah, well, Essendon would certainly start favourite in both those games.
Yeah, no, fair point.
But
I was more thinking that GWS won't finish 8th.
No, I think that's right. I think the draw season finish in 7th.
And I'd love it if Essendon made it, because West Coast are a lame duck. This is not a team that really deserves a spot in the 8. When I say deserves it, whoever finishes there deserves it. But then they don't hold anywhere near the interest that an Essendon would.
I've got to be, speaking as an Essendon supporter, I'm actually not that fussed. I think it would be better. It depends what happens, but I think it would be better for Essendon to miss out than to make it only to be smashed in an elimination final. And you'd think now...
You've been smashed in a lot of elimination finals.
Well, that's exactly my point.
I like it.
Yeah, okay. But...
including your first 2 ever.
Don't say you. It's unprofessional, right? I'm not
including Essendon's first club. 2 ever elimination finals.
Yes, I remember that. 72-73 against St Kilda at Waverley. I was there, don't worry. The point I was going to make was whoever finishes 8th is probably more than likely to play Brisbane at the Gabba in the elimination final. So pretty tough task for whoever that is. All right, let me go through some more questions. Darren Rockelin says, the Giants are the real bona fide side now that we've all been waiting to see to come to fruition. WTS, everyone. What does WTS stand for? Sorry. They are very good, capable of beating anyone on their day. I think that's true. I just still doubt that they have enough of those days. Granted that their last 2 have been great, but go back 3 weeks, their performance against Port Adelaide was pretty ordinary, So can they win? If you're coming from the bottom half of the 8, it's not rocket science, but sometimes people get too obsessed with the week by week thing. To win a flag from the bottom half of the 8, you have to pull out 3 of your best performances of the year in succession. Can they do that? I doubt it.
And they do have some legit issues. Hogan's, he's a crock. I've seen him play a few times. He starts like a healthy man and ends up, by the end of the game, he always looks like he's 53. So they're going with Hogan, but I don't know. And they've got ruck issues as well. I mean, I know Mumford was very good tonight, influential.
Yeah, Leroy Jones said you should have had him in the best, by the way.
Well, I did have him in the best until about halfway through the third. I sort of kept a tally. I thought he was very influential and I wanted him in the best, but they didn't play him. They preserved him in the second half a bit. So, well, look, there were a lot of good players. I mean, Hopper played a very good game.
No, their midfield's ticking over very nicely at the moment. Callum Ward, he's
that's as good as he's looked for ages, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say his recent good form. Oh, he's played some good footy lately, and it's given him that. It's like their senior players have stepped up to the plate again. So we're now talking about that midfield as a group. You know, Kelly, Taranto, Green when he was in. Ward's a big part of that. Hopper. So they've got a real solid core now. And I reckon when they were struggling, certainly at the start of his season, it was left to almost individuals on occasions to carry the midfield on their backs. So you need to spread the load.
I'll tell you what they do have, Rowan.
Yeah.
And a surprising amount of super boots. Boy.
Yeah, well, Daniel Lloyd's certainly one. Who are you talking about?
Perryman is an enormous kick.
Yeah.
How about Callan Ward when he's fit? He went back, he did out of 55 metres out. I'll kick that, no problems. I mean, they're just long. They've got some long shoes. Whitfield's a beautiful kick and can go long as well. Yeah. Hopper can kick long. The ones that missed all hit the top of the post.
Yeah, they certainly dobbed a few from outside 50 tonight. Julian Evans says, by my calculations, it's more likely that Swans will play GWS and Lions play West Coast or Essendon. The only variation is if both the Saints and Demons beat the Cats. That won't be happening. St Kilda will not beat Geelong this week.
I like your absolute definitive certainty about that.
They won't.
Why not?
Because Geelong need to keep
tipped
winning.
Geelong, but that's a big out for Geelong, Tom Stewart. I'll tell you what, that's a big out for them.
Mm.
You know how St Kilda can win that game, by the way? And this is not impossible if Cameron lasts a quarter.
Yeah.
They're already without Rowan. I'm saying, look, I tipped Geelong. I think Geelong will win. Don't get me wrong. But if Cameron's, went down again, that'd be tough for Geelong.
All right, we've got people. Simon Morris is asking, do you have plenty of charge on your phone tonight, Finey?
89% to start off with, and the charger nearby. So if it's a long show, I'm right. And I think it could be long because the device for the tipping is unusual.
Well, I can assure you it won't be overly long because at a certain point, I'm just walking off the set. And
you have not done that yet. You get sucked in like everybody else does with the tipping because it's fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rowan. I think you enjoy it, part of you.
To a point.
Look at you curmudgeon.
All right, Trout again says, why is it this year? Oh, no, let's not go here again. Why is it this year TV commentators are as confused about umpire calls and laughing on air more than ever before? It's getting worse every week, both ways. Well, laughing on air more because their producers tell them to ham up the entertainment factor. And some very misguided person got in their ear and told these guys that they were funny and entertaining, that everyone was riveted to everything they said because they played a couple of hundred games for Collingwood back in another century. I'd like to steer them clear on that one myself. But, yeah, look, I've got to say, as you know, Finey, I'm not a serial umpire basher, but I have had more issues with umpiring this year, but predominantly about the one thing, just their failure to pay holding the ball nearly quickly enough. And I think
because I thought the umpiring was great tonight, except those first two decisions.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, we should talk about that. I mean, look, Richmond got smashed, but gee, any sort of chance of building some momentum. I mean, that was a fantastic kick at goal from
By
Jack
Rewalt.
Greenwald.
Oh, beautiful.
Not only went through, but just about post high. And who gave away that one? Dylan Grimes, wasn't it? Was it Grimes or Lynch?
Lynch.
Are you sure?
It was up the full forward line. Yeah, it was Lynch.
Oh, yeah,
Lynch
sorry. Yeah. No, Grimes gave away the goal to Harry Himmelberg. So
Should that free kick have been given there or where Rewalt took the kick? That doesn't make sense to me. If somebody's having a kick from the back line, then why not pull the full forward's shirt in the forward line and move the ball 100 metres the other way? It should have been where Rewalt took the kick from.
I don't know if that's been rewritten in the last years. I thought it was now like 50 or where the infringement was, whichever was the greatest penalty.
You know what I'm saying? It's 50 if it went Richmond's way, but going the other way, shouldn't it be where the kick was taken from?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, what if Richmond had a free kick in their full back line, right? Let's just say Grimes took a mark on the full back line, right?
Yeah.
And Lynch did the same thing to Sam Taylor. Would you take the ball 180 metres down the other end of the ground and give it to GWS deep in their defence? Of course not.
No, so you pay the 50. It's whatever's the greatest advantage to the team earning the free kick.
You know what I'm saying? If you're the defensive team, it should be where the ball was kicked from. Anyhow, I'll tell you as an umpire, that's right.
All right.
It's not 50.
Okay, let's keep going. Wild Panda speculating that Cornelio goes to Fremantle next year and Green the next captain.
Yeah.
I'm pretty convinced Green will be the next captain. Wild Panda again, I won't trust Melbourne until I see them win their third premiership. Untrustworthy still. Gee, you're older than us, Wild Panda. Of course, 64 and one before that would have been 60. Yeah, okay. Well, so Wild Panda, we know that you're at least 60 years old. Happy birthday. If it was your birthday. Digby Norton says, hey guys, just wondering why it is that this year the stand rule has become so dominant. I noticed Richmond pinged several occasions for the rule. Were they tonight? I didn't see a 50 paid. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think it's become, look, to be honest, I think
the stand rule only started this year.
You got your interruptions going this tonight.
Well, explain why the stand rule is more this year, because it only started this year.
No, I didn't finish the sentence that would have let me start again. I think the stand rule has become less of a consideration the longer this season has gone. I think we're seeing fewer penalties applied, and I think the advantage that it offered attacking teams early in the season has been neutralised as sides have got more used to organising their defence to cope with it, right? Yeah, so...
But I'm just saying it didn't exist in previous years because it's part of a rule that was only brought in this year that you can't move at all off the mark from a free kick or mark until the umpire calls play on. Yeah,
correct. Robert Fidel says, is Rowan still convinced Richmond will win the flag? I am, Robert. I am. I think they're going to... No, I'm off. I did officially jump off the bandwagon several weeks ago. I did still think they'd make finals, which pretty hard to see that now. So someone, if they care to, can argue the mathematical case how they can, but I think
they need Essendon to lose both games, I think. That's ridiculous.
No, they're still... Yeah, they do. They need Essendon to lose both games. Yeah, correct, because Essendon's percentage is greater. So, yeah, no, they're not going to make it. Dimitri Burandanis says the Giants are the sort of team who would lose next week after all their good work. I must admit, I feel like that a bit about them this year. But, you know, that's not discounting the possibility that they've turned that corner now. I mean, it's come pretty late in the season. But as someone pointed out earlier, that's another similarity to 2019. I mean, remember with them, they got didn't they get absolutely smashed by the Doggies a couple of weeks? No, hang
before
on,
the finals.
I've got my years out. They got smashed by the Doggies one week and then beat them. Oh, that might have been 2018, actually.
No, 2019, they had terrible form going into the finals.
Yeah, that's right. They went goalless for a half in 2 successive games. The game against Hawthorn where it snowed, and then I think against the Bulldogs. Yeah, you're right. And that was they might have had one game before the finals where they sort of turned things around and then zipped through the finals campaign and went all the way to the big one.
Yep.
Darren again says Port are the biggest enigma in the finals race. I think we're underestimating how good they actually are. Now, I beg to differ on that one, Darren, because I think the stats really show they've actually been very consistent in terms of playing to their level. That is, they have now won, it's 19 consecutive games they've won against bottom 8 teams. And they've consistently failed to put away this year the sides above them or even around them on the ladder. Look, they did beat Richmond only by a kick, but that's been proven this year to be no great shakes. They beat Sydney at home by 10 points in a game that could have gone either way, but they lost to Melbourne, they lost comfortably to the Bulldogs, and they lost comfortably to Geelong. And they lost comfortably to Brisbane too, I think, up in Brisbane. So, I am struggling to see them as a legitimate challenger, but, we've still got one home and away round left. Suds McDuff says the front-on contact rule has become a bit ridiculous. It's now a netball level rule interpretation. I don't feel like it's changed at all. I mean, I think, we've certainly over the last few years it's certainly been more cut and dried, that basically if you're running at the man who's standing there camped under a ball and you make any sort of contact with him, you're going to get penalised.
Tonight, I thought, whatever you feel the interpretation is, it was very clear tonight. Anybody sort of established on the ground where somebody came in to tackle them, got a free kick for head high, and anybody camped under the ball basically, sort of got the free kick unless the ball was clearly won, which was that beautiful piece of play by Himmelberg to Taranto in that second quarter. Wasn't that a great, Mansell was sort of under the ball, but the two, bigger players, Himmelberg went for Mansell on the ball and tapped it back to Taranto. Beautiful teamwork.
A few comments about the draw. I think people agreeing with us, it's a valid result, and the hysteria every time there is one is boring. I just want to throw this one. Mark O'Sullivan, a well-known GWS supporter, thanks for joining us, Mark, says, I still think this season for the Giants is more exciting in terms of the possibilities in 2022.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, those lesser lights, if you like, in the team really have come into their own this year. I mean, who are we talking about there? We're talking about Cumming, Buckley till he got injured.
Iden,
Tom
Green.
Yeah, Iden's been great. Who was the next one you mentioned?
Tom Green.
Yeah, Tom Green's exciting. Even some of the more recent.
Young ruckmen.
Well, even the more Flynn, the more recent introductions are like I've been impressed with Broome. I think he's pretty impressive. So I can understand that, Mark, and I guess that'll be one.
Xavier O'Halloran, I thought was great.
He's definitely a week in, week out performer for them. I guess one of the interesting things for them next year and beyond will be, as those guys will be developing further, you're probably going to see quite a few fall out at the top end, aren't you? Like we talked about Cornelio. You'd be surprised if Phil Davis went on after this year, would you? Oh, I probably would.
Yeah. Sam Reid has been a great servant. But...
Yeah, Mummy. Do we think Mummy's going to go on with it?
Well, that mentoring role is there to turn Briggs into Mummy, and they do so well when he plays. Why not leave him on the list? I'd get rid of Bruce before I got rid of him. And De Boer showed what value he is tonight. He's a valuable player and definitely going to be playing on for a couple of years.
Oh, and he's also a great sort of a great hard tag possibility, isn't he? If they decide they really need to clamp down on well, who would they be likely to play in the first week of the finals? If they finish 7th, Sydney or Brisbane, it'd be, wouldn't
Brisbane, yeah. So he could easily get a job on
Neil.
Like Lockie Neal, or maybe I was sort of thinking, could he play on no, he's not a defender really. Somebody to play McCarthy would be handy.
No, you'd put him on your first choice midfielder, and then Sydney, it'd probably be Luke Parker. Yeah.
I tell you what, is it fair to say that Hogan was not pleased or very team oriented when De Boer played on and kicked that goal from the free kick he won?
Oh, I can't remember it.
Yeah, he got a free kick at the top of the square, but the ball bounced to De Boer, advantage goal.
Oh, and Hogan was pissed off about it, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, get over it, son.
Correct.
All right. Darren Prashino says, thoughts on the non-committal Tasmania announcement today and lamentable 2 of 3 proposed options. Just quickly, look, I haven't read the report. I've only briefly sort of flicked through a summary of what it came out with, but overall, it just seemed to me to be, someone used the expression, might have been Peter Goodwin, the Premier, kicking the can down the road. It's sort of, I mean, you come up with 3 different options, and I don't think any of those options was a Tasmanian team in its own right, was it? It was a relocation.
It was pathetic.
A joint venture, whatever. What is a joint venture? I don't know what that is. Well, what is a joint venture? What do they actually mean by that?
I don't know. It was hopeless. It was absolutely. How much do you pay for such a report?
Yeah, and I mean, it was Colin Carter who's done a lot of those sorts of jobs for the AFL previously, but it's sort of read like the commission or Gil McLachlan had said to him, we've got to be seen to be working on this, so go away and do a report and then throw a few options on the table. And then Gil, making the announcement, basically in the same breath, sort of pushed it on the back burner again by saying, and look, it's not an invalid point. We're hemorrhaging too much money at the moment. The game's lost 700 million during the pandemic and it's losing about 6 million a week. So fair enough, but then why go to the trouble of commissioning a report? Why not put a definite time frame on it? And why on earth wouldn't you have as a valid option them creating their own team? In the same breath, committing to Gold Coast. So, I mean, they're quite happy to go and create new teams in sort of non-traditional football areas and say point blank, these things will be given all the support they need. Why are they so less prepared to do that with the Tasmanian team? I don't understand it.
Well, people who believe that there was never any genuine desire or will to create a Tasmanian team are already suggesting that, of course, they commissioned this report during the COVID epidemic. What an easy cop-out it is to say that the game just can't afford it and we'll think about it, never. Why would you do this during COVID when obviously the finances are being stretched? Very unfair.
Well, I would have, delayed the release of the report or kept going on the report. But, so given the wishy-washy sort of conclusions of the report, why bother even releasing it now?
Yeah, correct.
All it's done is get Tasmania's back up to the point where the Premier's now saying, unless we see something that actually means something or gives us a goal, we'll pull funding for both Hawthorn and North Melbourne.
Correct. And it's another kick in the guts for footy in Tasmania, and youngsters there will be hardly, putting their hand up to play football in the hope of representing, the team in the AFL. That dream's been well and truly stepped on. So very disappointed.
Peter Andronopoulos says JB gave us another private school reference to after the game, mentioning the school Alex Rance went to. I tell you what, can I say, look, I get on all right with JB, James Brayshaw. He's an affable guy, but if you want to talk about these, sort of guys who live in the bubble, I think his bubble is bigger than just about anyone else in that football media fraternity. He just lives in a world of privilege and money and high-level mates who've played professional sport or they're, captains of industry or whatever. And then so he would be absolutely oblivious to the fact that by constantly crapping on about which elite school this player or that player went to, he's pissing a lot of people off and disenfranchising the school, the educational backgrounds of a whole lot of other guys playing league footy. He'd be completely oblivious to it. And, this isn't in reference to the private school stuff, but when people talk about Eddie Maguire, and we were talking before we started tonight about Eddie's latest effort on Footy Classified the other night, Eddie is a classic example of this. He has lived with so much privilege and entitlement for the last 30 years in his professional and personal existence that he is absolutely unaware. His inability to read the room and gauge the mood of the general public is non-existent because he has no contact with the general public. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree.
Okay.
Entirely. I do know that I certainly.
So Eddie's a real down-to-earth grassroots kind of guy now, is he?
Well, Rowan, you can't strive to succeed, and I'm not going to criticise somebody for being successful in their life, and then assume that they only associate with like people. His brother isn't his brother still a politician with...
Yeah, he's a MLA. He's a state MP. Yeah. And?
No, I'm saying, but he's very closely connected with his family. I know his sister actually taught my daughter, a highly respected educator. I'm sure he's very close with his family, and that would ground him. I mean, they wouldn't let him just,
Well, they are finding, sorry, I mean, I'm not getting angry at you, but they are, mate, because he just keeps failing to read the room. And he did it again on Footy Classified.
I'm saying, but that's on TV. I'm just saying...
That's where 90% of the people see him.
All right. That's how you feel about him. He also plays the I don't buy it either. The old CBC card and the Broady card and this and that every now and then.
But okay, yeah. Look, I mean, let's not zero in on Eddie. I'll declare my hand here. I've ended up this week talking to several former Indigenous AFL players about how pissed off they are. They are livid, and we talked about this on the podcast. But one of the big issues we've got here with AFL football confronting the racist issue is that so many of the people who are involved in covering the sport and thus almost setting the agenda for the discussions about it live in this world of entitlement. They don't speak to Indigenous people. They don't deal with them. And Eddie's thing the other night, where they showed Taylor Walker's apology, Eddie came back and he ran a commentary on the apology. Well, that's good enough for me. That's tick the boxes. And this whole narrative for the last week has all been about Taylor Walker and completely and utterly ignored the issue which has emerged from it, which is the continuing scourge of racism. No one's talked about that. It's all been framed as Taylor Walker.
I understand that.
And Eddie Betts. It's a much bigger problem.
I understand that, but I feel that you are focused on an aspect of racism in this country that is very real and very disturbing, and that is the deep-seated racism that exists in the wealthy and those who have come from private school backgrounds, and that boys' club and that whole private club, we're better than you, superiority. And you quite rightly do recognise that.
So what?
But equally, from the other side of the street, there is a deep-seated racism in uneducated, I'm not talking about their schooling, but the antithesis of the people that you rail against in a social sense, also through lack of education and, harbour racist sentiment as well.
Okay, I get it. It's more overt. But this is exactly my point, Finey, that the people I'm talking about are in a position to set the agenda and the discussion and thus help shape the values of the people you're talking about. And we're not getting that. We're just getting this sort of... That's why I say you're right to rail against it. Yeah, we're getting this white bread, privileged view of the world. And, it's Channel 7, the boys' club, the Channel 7 all white, they've now finally got Daisy Pearce and Abby Holmes. And now we're starting to see more Indigenous people pop up in the media. I mean, Tony Armstrong, I think, is a really accomplished media commentator. We're seeing Chris Johnson now, but it always smacks of tokenism. It's like they think, let's grab a Sheila or let's put in a coloured guy and we'll get people off our back. There's no genuine commitment to it. I don't think they have a genuine bone in the bodies, the people that make the programming decisions in mainstream media now. I think the mainstream media in this country is irretrievably rooted. All right, let's get on with it. Otherwise, this is going to turn into a political sermon.
All right, I'm going to say to you, a lot of people are talking about the way the teams matched up this round.
Yeah.
That there was an interesting trivia fact about the matchups in this round.
It was something about the top 8 all playing the bottom 8 or 9 playing the bottom 9.
Yeah, well, that's what people were saying. And I thought to myself, big friggin' deal. Who cares? There was a much better trivia moment in this round.
And what was it?
And that is that the teams with the 2 best club songs play each other. Well, they played each other tonight. And the teams with the 2 worst club songs play each other.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call.
Of course, that's the derby.
Yeah, big hello to our Western Australian audience. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I agree the Giants and Richmond have the best theme songs, and I agree that West Coast and Freo probably have the worst. All right, let's keep going. David Dennett has weighed in on the Tasmanian issue. He says, have either of you guys read the Carter report? Well, you might have missed what we said, David. We haven't read it yet. I will. I'm surprised at how superficial it is. Just as one example, it doesn't ask whether a 19th team might actually lessen the value of TV rights. It does suggest the AFL doesn't think the extra matches will add much because they're of lesser profile. But since the 19th licence means that the bigger drawing clubs will have at least another 1 or 2 buys, it arguably could dilute the existing TV rights, surely. One also has to query the rigour of the analysis, given it spends several paragraphs talking about small market teams, largely focused on the Green Bay NFL franchise, which, according to Carter, played in this year's Super Bowl. Green Bay, of course, didn't. He's confused Green Bay with Tampa Bay, and no one picked up the error. I bet Craig Hutchison did. No, it's a fair comment.
I'll tell you, speaking of Craig Hutchison, I turned on SEN last night. I was shocked with what they had on. I enjoyed it when I was in the car, but I was shocked.
Because you enjoyed it?
No.
Okay, what was it?
They were covering the England-India test match, ball by ball.
Yeah.
And they had their own commentators there.
Yeah, it's a deal. Adam Collins has played a part in this. I did read something about it. Yeah. I'm sure it was because they had advertising or sponsors to back it with.
Yeah. Oh, mate, we'd be listening. I could have turned on and listened to the 3rd annual Junior Boxing Championships from the Isle of Gibraltar if they got sponsors for it. Betfair brings you bocce from Gibraltar.
Yeah, well.
Honestly, yeah.
All right, let's keep moving. Gary Butterfield says, yeah, FA self-awareness for both JB and Ed. Johnson Von Trapp says Maguire has no self-awareness. Ben Healy says panel show after panel show talking about the Walker racism, we're all white. Did nothing to add to the conversation. Cultural diversity desperately needed in footy media. Can I just say there, like I mentioned the package that Fox Footy showed at halftime tonight, that to me is part of the problem as well. That they sort of think, you know, we'll run a couple of grabs of the Indigenous guy saying something meaningful and moving, and we'll smack the, you know, the sort of tear-jerking music behind it and put a tone over the footage. And then when we throw back to you, Gaz, make sure you're looking quite stern at the camera and say, you know, or if it was Jared Waitley, you know, actually, can you do Jared Waitley here about how he'd back announce a package of racism comments?
The world has changed forever. Unfortunately, not for the better. The incident with Taylor, Tex Walker, and Robbie Young reminds me of a similar occurrence in 1932 when Presnajo of Serbia found himself counted by a number of voices, we'll call them, in the Croatian parliament. Hard to forget those moments.
That's very good. Yeah, no, very good. Good effort. All right. Broader17 is asking which ones influence the uneducated. Well, I mean, the media generally, Broader17, and I'm not, you know, I'm not for a moment saying that should be the case, but you would have to agree that the agenda on what we talk about, not just in football, but politics and society, tends to be shaped by what the major media outlets are focusing on. And that's why they have great power. And that's why part of the reason I'm so critical of News Corp in a political sense is that they give us what they want the world to appear as rather than as it actually is. And I think the gap between the views that the major media outlets are portraying and what is really happening is growing larger because I think journalists are tending to become from you know higher socioeconomic backgrounds and private school privilege sort of educations, and they tend to be very middle class, and they tend to all sort of live in Melbourne in the eastern suburbs, and they really don't get much of it. Yeah, and you could see it reflected in the sorts of stories they do, like we send a reporter out into the wilds of the western suburbs to find out what's happening on the street, like it's some expedition to, the African jungle. We're out at the media, and, like I'm on the fringes of it now, but very out of touch, I think, with modern society. And it's reflected, certainly on TV, it's reflected in the lack of different racial groups and their representation, not just in news, but in TV shows. And it's a real problem. It's a real problem.
I think you're a bit behind the game in how society is influenced though now, because I've got to say that my kids, their generation, first of all, they don't watch TV. TV is dead to them. I just can't get them to watch TV. They don't watch TV at all. They're on YouTube and Instagram, whatever. But they see, that's where the hope is. Kids from private schools, public schools, whatever, they are far less concerned with the colour of people's skin than when we were growing up.
I agree.
Than our generation was.
And
very accepting of gender choicing and sexual orientation, very different to my times. So the hope is there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Just quickly, Glenn has just weighed in to say two white guys talking racism. Well, I don't know if you just jumped on, Glenn, but that was exactly the problem that I was bringing up. We are both white. I hope you're not suggesting that we should not talk about it, because we're talking about it alerting people to the fact that there is a problem of having these discussions of white guys talking racism. So what is your alternative for us? Not to discuss it at all and thus just perpetuate that problem?
Yeah, it's all right. Is it Glenn?
Yeah.
It's all right, mate. I'm Jewish and anti-Semitism is alive and well. Believe me.
All right. Gary.
No comment on that?
Anti-Semitism?
Oh, it's alive and well. It is.
No, I know it is. I know it
I'm
is.
saying, so, yeah.
Gary Butterfield says Channel 7 should be embarrassed with their tokenism. Scott Howe says Gilbert McAdam should be special comments every week. Cato says root of problem. I recently signed a petition for Indigenous history to be taught in primary schools. Yes, 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 yes. That is a big thing. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, think back to our education. What do we know about Indigenous culture?
Oh, it's pretty poor, mate. We had to read Walkabout, and we saw some movies, and that was tokenism. I'll tell you.
So if we were serious about it as a country, we would be doing things like that. And we don't. No government sort of tackles this issue either sensitively or full on. They don't. They have no interest in it. Then again, yeah, no, maybe I better not go there. I would argue at the moment we have a government that doesn't tackle any issue with any seriousness.
Yeah, let's get off the politics.
All right. Brodders, that was me agreeing with you, Rowan. I was asking the question of Finey right before you said it. Okay, fair enough, Brodders. I don't think I was being critical of you. Scott Howe likes your historical analogy there, Finey. I think it was Gerard Whateley impersonation. Liam Evans says the boys club doesn't want to move forward. We've got to demand more and better. Yeah, we do. Does that in itself sort of initiate change? I think, look, you know what? The grassroots campaigns, and you're sort of talking, Finey, about you're right, the younger generations now getting their information from different sources to what we did, which has sort of made the influence of the mass media a bit less all-encompassing than it was. But
they wouldn't watch Sky News for 5 minutes.
No. Well, what I was going to say here was the more effective sort of people campaigns that have happened in recent years have been, there's a group called Sleeping Giants. It's like targeting the advertisers on Sky News and, pointing out your objections to them. These people like Sky News, for example, they only start feeling the heat when they start losing advertisers. So that's sort of what you have to do. I think people sort of protesting directly to the networks responsible has zero effect. They only give us stuff about their advertising revenue. Let's get back on footy. Simon Morris says, how amazing that in Joel Selwood's 330 games, he's only played in one meaningless game, round 24, 2015. By meaningless, I presume you mean a game in which his side could not play in finals.
That's amazing. What a great fact that is.
Well, his first season was 2007.
Yeah, great. That's Geelong, a beauty.
Geelong has missed finals once in 14 seasons. Pretty fair.
Great notification. That.
Harper Pestinger, a good friend of the program, says even in lefty, quote unquote, inner city high schools these days, no Indigenous history gets taught. That's disappointing. Wild Panda says, my daughter is 7, lives in Kensington, and her school taught her Welcome to Country. Guess that's a start. You see Welcome to Country performed at a lot of functions and stuff now, but every time you see it done, you'll see someone sort of rolling their eyes about it. Like we need to, I think, sort of shed our cynicism about it. I really look up to New Zealand on this score because, my observation when I was there and what I know of it, white people in New Zealand seem to have really embraced or, sort of learned to, really sort of, I'm losing the words, but celebrate Maori culture.
Yeah, but that's because that's a historical fact, Rowan, that they invaded New Zealand and got defeated. They couldn't defeat the Maoris. They had to sign a treaty with them. So
Yeah.
the Maoris never were second-class citizens. In fact, the English always were there at the generous sort of tolerant. They were tolerated generously by the people that inhabited New Zealand prior to them, the Maoris, who themselves only arrived there historically, not that long before the English. Look, we've got to face a very uncomfortable fact here in Australia, Rowan, and that is that we can look down our nose at South Africa and apartheid. We can look down our nose at America's racial disharmony with white America and black America and Hispanic America. And the only reason we do that is because we came here all guns blazing and massacred the inhabitants. You know, I mean, it's the Indigenous Australians that remain are survivors of a massacre that happened when the English arrived here.
And we enslaved them. And
I'm saying otherwise, you know, that's.
Yeah, hang on, let me finish here. So
Yeah.
we not only enslaved them, we, you know, as recently as 50, 60 years ago, removed children from their parents. And yet you have one of Australia's most widely read columnists who refuses to concede that ever happened. And in fact, writes constantly that it didn't.
Yeah, but he also refuses to believe that global warming exists because every scientist and every from any person that's done any analysis of the North and South Pole to the fact that yesterday was the hottest recorded day in European history. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
They got to 48.8 somewhere.
Yeah. Well, up in...
To 48 in Canada?
Yeah, Northern Canada's had some massive issues there.
Anyway, whatever.
Joe Hess says, I want to read this one from Joe. He says, as a primary educator in the system at the moment, we are starting to incorporate a lot more of Indigenous history and culture into the current curriculum. It is happening. Totally agree with Finey. This generation is much more accepting and understanding.
Yeah. And I'm going to say Wesley have always, since we've been there, had a great understanding of Indigenous Australia because they've got a program in Western Australia, a student transfer where kids go there and that's tribal. That's a genuine tribal setting.
Yeah.
I can, you know, we've been involved with the school for 25 years now and always opened any official school meeting with recognition of, you know, the Indigenous landowners and in fact in I don't know what the language is, whether it's from Western Australia or whether it's the language of people here on the lands, but it's actually said in native tongue. So
Julian again says we should be changing our place names back to what the traditional owners called them. How many bloody King and Queen streets names do we have? David Dennett says few Australians realise that we still had the equivalent of pass laws in 2 states as recently as the 1970s. I think one of them was Western Australia. How can we be truly proud of this nation when we're too embarrassed to look at our history honestly? Okay, we're going to finish with 2 different ones and then we'll get on to the tipping. Simon Morris says, what nickname and colours would you give a Tassie AFL team?
Oh, absolute certainty.
Yeah.
Green with a mohair map of Tasmania and call them the maps of Tassie.
Okay, yep, good. We did the blue joke suitably late.
Well, it's after midnight. Is it midnight yet?
Yeah, can you answer it seriously now?
All right, I would call them something like, I don't know, definitely not anything Apple Isle or Devil or whatever, something.
Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the Devils?
Because it's it's cliched. I think we can come up with something better than that.
All right, well, colours, green, gold and primrose.
No,
Why not?
because again, that's their old state colours.
So what?
Give them something of themselves.
Well, that is themselves. I mean, I think you'd take that. That is their history and heritage. You take that and you shape it into the new team.
I know. So what could unite the North and the South?
Not a lot. I think they're forever destined to be at loggerheads.
I'd like to call them the Tasmanian crayfish, the crays, because they're famous for their crays.
Yeah, that would certainly strike fear into the hearts of opponents.
Like the swans.
Yeah, well, that's true. The Tassie thylacines, says Leroy.
Yeah, well, they're extinct. That's not a great start.
Yeah, Stephen Smith agrees with me. Green, gold and primrose. All right, enough on that. Last one before we do the tips.
You know what colours I'd give them? Black and white stripes.
Yeah, no, that'd go really well. Well, it could
with
work.
Your mate.
Well, it could work because Eddie could finally have a coronary. Just kidding, Ed. All right. So the other one I was asked there, I've now lost it. Oh, Hayden Murdoch is asking the Clash or Sex Pistols. Definitely the Sex Pistols, Hayden. I've got to say I never really warmed to the Clash. I didn't get them or something. Whereas the Sex Pistols, one album, but killer album. Still a killer album. All right. Let's get on to the tips, Finey.
I'll answer that question as well, Rowan.
Okay, well, answer it. Can you answer it like briefly?
Yeah, unlike you. The Clash, London Calling, yes, and then Rock the Casbah. Are you serious?
That wasn't the Clash. Oh, yes, it was.
Casbah.
Sorry, it was. No, I was thinking it was Big Audio Dynamite. It was the Clash.
The Clash.
Yeah.
And it really was commercial junk. And they lost me quickly.
Yeah,
but
okay.
London Calling.
Yeah, London Calling's a good song, but I've tried to listen to them. I find there's a lot of sort of, I don't know, reggae influence in their stuff.
No, they went bad very quickly.
All right. So what is our tipping device this week?
All right. So for the team that you're tipping,
yeah,
you have to give me the initials of a known villain, tribunal regular, or boo boy. A sort of a bad to the bone type from that club.
Okay, but you said
so he could be to the tribunal. He could be known as a bit of a hitman. He could just be a boo boy.
Boo boy being a whipping boy.
Oh no, what the other supporters used to boo. Not,
all right. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's do it. So first game tomorrow at in Launceston, 1:45 p.m. It is Hawthorn taking on the Western Bulldogs. All right. I'm going to go. So people, were you able to put something up to that effect, Damon, saying what? Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going DS.
Danny Southern.
Correct.
I'm going JE.
Jim Edmund.
Yep.
Okay. All right. There's number one. And send through your selections, people. Danny Southern says Dion Stennard. Stephen Crediuk says Robert Rice.
No, he was a ripper, Creditors. How about Hawthorn? You'd be going for a week. LM.
Well, you could go RD.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty. Believe me. How about DD?
Delicate Des Dixon. That's
or triple D.
DD.
Delicate D. Yeah, triple D.
Yeah, you could. All right, next we have Geelong taking on St Kilda, 4:35 p.m. at GMHBA Stadium. Peter Phoebe says TL, by the way, for the doggies.
Libba.
Yeah.
I think he's going to take a locket for St Kilda.
While Panda goes Jose Romero.
Yeah. Good.
Craig Bradley was suspended twice in his career, both times for hitting Ramiro.
It's great when that happens.
All right, next game, Geelong St Kilda at 4:35 p.m.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go controversially. I'm going to go GA.
Yeah, well, he's a thug, Gary Ablett.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't need to tell St Kilda supporters about that.
Yeah.
Nathan Burke, helmet.
Christian Bardsley.
Bardsley. Burke.
I was there that day.
Well, Burke had to wear a helmet for his career.
All right, who are you going with?
I'm going to go with RW.
Rod Waddell.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good get for me, isn't it?
Yeah, very good.
Robert Rice says Cameron Mooney. Julian Evans says Gary Hocking. Fair calls.
Yeah.
MJ.
For Geelong.
Yep.
MJ. Mark Jackson.
Correct.
How about the list at St Kilda?
CD. Yeah, okay, I'll fire a few St Kilda ones at you.
CDRMJO.
Yeah.
Have you got them?
Yeah, well, our listeners have sent through. Yeah, Ben
I
Miller
mean,
says...
I know the worst one. JR.
Tell us.
Well, that's the Jim Reed. That's the guy that Barry Davis tells the story that when he came, Jim Reed smashed him in the head. And he was out for 12 weeks and Reed got 12 weeks. And both of their first games back were against each other. But when he hit him, like he knocked his eyeball out of its socket or whatever, anyhow, they laid him in the rooms and they were treating him. And he reckoned, Barry tells a good story.
Yeah.
He said the players came in at half time and walked past him. He said, I won't name them, but 3 of them vomited in their own hands.
Oh. All right. Barry Hall, of course, another one for the Saints.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Also at 4:35 tomorrow, Port Adelaide taking on Carlton at Adelaide Oval.
I'll go first.
Okay.
JC.
Josh Carr.
Yeah. That's like the gimme from that.
Yeah, I'm struggling here.
DB.
Oh, hang on. I just thought of one. Oh, God, I can picture him. TP. No, DP.
Not Darryl Poole.
Yeah.
One eye Jack.
Yeah, he was pretty rough, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, they had one eye. You had to be careful.
Well, he looked tough.
Yeah, I went DB as well.
Who's that?
Roger Ramjet or Dean Brogan.
Oh, Dean Brogan. Is he tough? Okay.
He was nasty at an airport once.
Not sure people have got the concept of this one. Josh Franco? Don't think so.
No.
Nick Stevens? Oh, well.
Oh, maybe.
Don't laugh. So subsequent to playing.
I think somebody's got that spot on.
Oh, no. Vaughan's come up with the best one for Port, I think. Yeah, DH.
Dickhead.
Yes, very good.
DH. Better than Josh Carr.
Yeah. We've lost you.
No, I'm back. DH. Not Dan Houston. He's a sweetheart.
We're not waiting for you this one because you've already done it.
Yeah, but David.
Premiership player. Yeah, there you go.
Well, DH, premiership player.
Yes,
Damien Hardwick.
Correct.
Dimmer, he's a sweetheart.
7:25 Saturday night at the Gabba, Brisbane taking on Collingwood. RM.
Roger Merritt.
Yep.
Go So I go BS.
Brad Scott.
Yeah.
Dion Stannard, Martin Pike. We got Fabian Francis.
Pikey.
Fabian Francis wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
Rugged, wasn't it?
No.
Collingwood suggestions. We have Dennis Banks. Stephen Smith, you don't get this game, mate. Steel side bottom is in no way a tough guy.
No, Collingwood's got any of the Shores, RS, TS.
DT.
He was ferocious, Des Tuddenham. Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
Tom Wilson says, RoCo, I love how in the first final, SIREN Finey insisted on playing this game. You hated it. I don't hate the game, Tom. I just hate it when it goes on for bloody half an hour.
Well, hang on. Who's the classic Collingwood one?
Sorry, wait, Finey. Gary Butterfield wants to know which game you're going to have your 10-minute thinking pause in so he can go to the toilet.
Well, I wouldn't hang on, mate. I'd take your chances. Hope you got good bowels. I think I've got it now because I can't remember the guy's name and I've interviewed him. The guy that knocked out Somerville.
Duncan Wright.
Yeah, Duncan Wright, DW.
Yeah, Dominic Mazza came up with that one.
Yeah. Interesting story, man.
Yeah, let's not tell it now. Scott Howe says,
why not? It's worth hearing.
Because we're wrapping it up.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I know the true story.
Yeah, I know you do.
He told me the true story.
Yeah, not hearing it. Craig Kelly.
Pinchy Punchy.
7:40 p.m. North Melbourne taking on Sydney. Oh, I got a good one. SG.
SG.
Yeah.
Stuart Gull.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a good one. I've got to remember his first name.
Robert Rice has got a ripper.
So it's a second initial B.
Yep.
Yeah, because I can't remember his first name. Boyd.
Yep.
Because that's a great story as well.
Harper's got a good one. SM. Forget the story. Just give us the name.
Well, Boyd is his surname. He was the ruckman that knocked out Nichols.
Yeah, I know. What's his first name?
I'm trying to remember.
Think about Doles.
Goals.
Doles.
Goals, you said?
Doles.
Doles.
Yes.
Oh, Doles.
Yes.
Barbie.
That's it. Barbie Boyd.
You're an idiot. What was his name? Not Barry Boyd.
Oh my God, you don't get it. You just said Barbie. Who's Barbie hanging around with?
Ken Boyd. So I was mates with Freddie Goldsmith. He used to work at the Bush Inn and I did pub trivia there and I used to get on great. Anyhow, Fred told me about Ken Boyd. He hated him because when he finished, both of them went up and played up at Albury around there. And he said Ken Boyd lined up this kid in the ruck one day, but he was only a skinny little 19-year-old. And they had to take him to Melbourne to get his kidney removed. I mean, but Ken Boyd did himself in the social club, you know that.
What do you mean did himself in?
Well, he knocked Nichols out, but nobody saw it. And you know how the teams used to have a drink in the social club afterwards?
Yeah.
Anyhow, people were speculating what happened and being boastful, whatever. He just, after a couple of beers, said, "Oh, fucking hell, I knocked the bastard out." And he was the first guy to be suspended, not from an umpire's report, but from a subsequent report issued after the match.
Oh, really?
The umpires were there and heard him boasting about it.
Didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So who'd you go with as your selection for this game? Oh, Ken Boyd. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, for Sydney.
Yeah.
Oh, no, LM. Or AF. AF would be the one. AF.
No, it's going to be some guy from the 40s or something.
No way. He was from the 1920s and 1910s, the most notorious footballer pre-World War II, Albert Franks.
Okay, that's good. but it reveals a fundamental flaw in this game, which is if you go with Albert Franks from the 1920s, clearly I'm not going to guess that. So
why not? You know footy.
Not the 1920s, I don't.
So they had two players, Albert Franks, who was ferocious, and Len Mortimer, who had a great nickname for a dangerous footballer. Mother, because it was like the last thing, Mother, Len Mother Mortimer. Oh, God, they were fearsome, mate.
All right, let's go. Melbourne, Adelaide, Sunday, 2:10 p.m. at the MCG. Yeah, I'm going with...
Not easy to find a dirty Melbourne player.
Oh, I just thought of one before. RG.
Rod Grinter.
Correct.
Good bloke too. I'll go for... I'm not going to go for Carl. I'll go for PK.
Peter Keenan.
Yeah, he got rubbed out a few times, didn't he?
He did. It was a very violent sort of South Melbourne game at the MCG in 1981, which David Rees-Jones played. No stories.
No, I've got to stop, mate. First of all, Peter Keenan's son, you know he was in the Olympics?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a rower.
Ah, okay.
And a guy I know played one of his 2 VFL, AFL games that day for Melbourne.
And who's
that? Guess who he played on?
David Rees-Jones.
David Rees-Jones. Trevor Corn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have heard that now.
Yeah, imagine playing on David Rees-Jones that day. Crikey.
All right, 3:20 p.m. at the unlikely venue of GMHBA Stadium. Yep. Gold Coast taking on Essendon. R8.
Ron Andrews.
Yep.
IS.
Ian Shelton.
Yeah.
Good call. Last game of the round, 5:10 p.m. The Derby. You're not allowed to call it Derby, or people in Perth get very annoyed. Dean Wallace says Dion Steadman, Robert Rice gone, Phil Carman. The Derby is at 5:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I should have gone for Essendon, JM. That would have thrown the cat amongst the pigeons.
Jack Myerchuk.
Yeah.
I'm going to go... West Coast having a lot of tough guys. I'm going to go PR.
PR.
Oh, no, I can sense this. This is our 10-minute one.
PR. Philip Reid. Hardly. Phil Reid?
Well, he played like a tough guy.
No, you do a proper one.
No, that was my call.
I'm not paying it. Like Steel Sidebar.
Oh,
come on. You had a pretty famous one. Think of Richard Osborne.
Against West Coast.
You can't remember what happened.
I remember Richard Osborne almost died at the SCG.
Yeah.
I remember he did his knee against Collingwood.
Yeah.
What other? Can't remember him getting fixed up by a West Coast player for Fitzroy, or when he was playing for Fitzroy.
I don't think so. It was towards the end of his career. I can't remember.
All right.
Premiership coach.
Yeah, JW. Yeah, okay, that's a better call. Who's your one?
Didn't he smash Richard Osborne?
Not that I remember.
Yeah. The MCG. I'm going to go for... Oh, yeah, this guy's completely insane. Because this guy once hit his own teammate, but playing for another team. PW.
Hit a teammate playing for another team.
Yeah, he smashed a teammate.
Peter Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I watched a highlights package of the 94 grand final the other night. Peter Wilson played pretty well in that guy.
He looked like a mini Mark Jackson, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Had the put chisel chin thing happening.
Yep.
Jeff Miles cleaned up Osborne, says Robert Rice.
So who did Worsfold smash at the MCG?
Worsfold got Dermy at Subiaco.
I'm going to look that up straight after the show.
Okay.
Jeff Miles didn't get Osborne.
Gary Butterfield has a superficially bizarre choice, but it has some reason to it. AG.
In which game?
The last game. For
Andrew
West
Gaff.
Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is good.
And the classic would be DK because he played for both teams.
Dale Kickett.
And he certainly made a feast of one derby.
Yeah, and you know who he fixed up in that derby?
Whom?
Phil Reid.
Phil Reid. Full circle.
Phil Reid got absolutely smashed in that demolition derby. All right, that is it, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Good show tonight. Good win to the Giants too. We'll be back in podcast form Sunday evening to wrap up round 22. And we'll be back in this form next Friday night, of course. And we don't know what the game is going to be, although I did actually hear a suspicion or a suggestion it would be, as he flicked desperate. I think it's going to be Western Bulldogs, Port Adelaide. So 2 top 4 teams. That could be a really interesting clash.
Yeah,
become a Footyology patron if you haven't yet. Come on, I'm going to guilt you into it before the end of this season. Put your money where your mouth is. It's just $7 a month, and you really do help us pay the wage bills and feed our kids. So thanks, Tom. I've got some nice thank yous coming in. So thanks, everyone. We appreciate your support. And we'll be back with the podcast Sunday evening. Good luck to all your teams this weekend, unless you're a Richmond fan, of course, when it's already done and dusted. But to everyone else, good luck, and we'll speak to you soon.
Here.
See ya.